The metallic screech of power tools cutting through carbon fiber echoed across the stunned stadium as police officers dismantled Marcus Thompson's racing wheelchair, piece by piece. 12,000 spectators watched in horrified silence as the three-time Paralympic gold medalist sat helplessly on the track, his dreams of defending his title literally being torn apart before his eyes. The acrid smell of burning metal filled the air, while news cameras captured every devastating moment, broadcasting the surreal scene to millions of viewers worldwide. Just 30 minutes earlier, Marcus had been in the zone, his powerful shoulders rolling in perfect rhythm as he completed his final warm-up lap around the pristine blue track. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the infield where other athletes stretched and prepared for what many considered the most anticipated race of the Paralympic Games. His custom-built racing chair, a marvel of engineering that had cost him 2 years of savings and countless hours of fine-tuning, hummed beneath him like a finely tuned instrument. The crowd's energy was palpable, a low murmur of excitement building toward the crescendo that would explode when the starting pistol fired. Marcus had worked 16 years for this moment. 16 years since the drunk driver had run a red light and shattered his spine along with his dreams of competing in the Olympics as a sprinter. The transition to wheelchair racing hadn't been easy, but Marcus possessed the kind of determination that transforms tragedy into triumph. His coach, Elena Rodriguez, stood near the warm-up area, stopwatch in hand, her face beaming with the quiet confidence that comes from knowing your athlete is ready to make history. "Looking good out there. Marcus," Elena called as he rolled to a stop beside her. "Your splits are perfect. Stay loose, stay focused. This is your race." Marcus nodded, his breathing steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. At 28, he was in the prime of his career, his body a testament to years of grueling training. His sponsors had flown in from around the world to witness what they hoped would be another dominant performance from their star athlete. The prize money from today's race would secure his future and fund the youth wheelchair racing program he'd been dreaming of starting in his hometown of Detroit. That's when Karen Pemberton appeared. She emerged from the restricted access area like a storm cloud gathering strength, her perfectly styled blonde hair catching the stadium lights as she strode purposefully toward the race officials. Karen wasn't just any spectator. She was the self-appointed president of the Fair Competition Alliance, a fringe organization that had made headlines for challenging various athletes and sporting events with increasingly outrageous claims. Her social media following had grown to over 50,000 people who shared her belief that modern sports were riddled with corruption and performance-enhancing conspiracies. Karen's voice cut through the pre-race atmosphere like a knife. "Excuse me, officials, but I need to report a serious violation that's about to take place." Her tone carried the authority of someone accustomed to being heard, and the urgency in her words immediately caught the attention of nearby security personnel. Race official David Chen, a veteran administrator who had overseen hundreds of Paralympic events, looked up from his clipboard with barely concealed irritation. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to return to the spectator areas. We have a race starting in 20 minutes. 20 minutes is plenty of time to prevent a massive scandal," Karen replied, her voice rising to ensure nearby athletes and media could hear her words. "That man in lane 4, Marcus Thompson, is using his wheelchair to hide performance-enhancing drugs. I have reason to believe he's been injecting substances through hidden compartments in his racing chair." The accusation hit the warm-up area like a physical blow. Conversations stopped mid-sentence, and the easy camaraderie between athletes evaporated into uncomfortable tension. Marcus felt his stomach drop as whispers began spreading through the crowd. Elena stepped protectively closer to her athlete, her face flushed with anger. "That's absolutely ridiculous," Elena said, her voice shaking with controlled fury. Marcus has been tested more than any athlete in this sport. His equipment has been inspected and approved by race officials multiple times. Karen's eyes gleamed with the fervor of someone who believed she was exposing a great conspiracy. Of course his team would say that. But I've been researching this for months. These high-tech wheelchairs have hidden compartments that can store microsyringes and timing devices for releasing substances during races. The entire Paralympic system has been compromised by this technology. David Chen had dealt with cranks and conspiracy theorists before. But something about Karen's persistence and the growing crowd of onlookers made him hesitate. The last thing the Paralympics needed was another doping scandal, especially one involving their most popular athlete. Ma'am, these are very serious allegations. Do you have any evidence to support these claims? Karen pulled out her smartphone, swiping through a series of screenshots and forum posts. I have documentation from online sources that detail exactly how these modifications work. Plus, look at his performance progression over the past 2 years. It's not natural. No one improves that dramatically without chemical assistance. Marcus felt the world tilting around him as more officials gathered to listen to Karen's accusations. His hard-earned reputation, built through years of clean competition and rigorous testing, was being shredded by someone who had never met him, never watched him train, never understood the sacrifice required to compete at this level. "This is insane," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Everything about my chair has been documented and approved. I've never failed a drug test in my life." But Karen was just getting started. She had called ahead. She explained to the growing circle of officials and spoken to a sympathetic police sergeant who specialized in drug crimes. "I've already filed a formal complaint with local law enforcement. They should be here any minute to conduct a proper search. This isn't just about fair competition. It's about criminal activity." The color drained from Marcus's face as the implications became clear. A police investigation at a Paralympic event would be an unprecedented scandal. Even if he was completely exonerated, the damage to his reputation and the sport itself could be irreversible. "You can't be serious," he said, looking desperately at the race officials. "I've been competing clean for my entire career. My chair has been inspected by technical officials from 3 different countries." Elena stepped forward, her coaching credentials and decades of experience lending weight to her words. "This woman is clearly disturbed. She's making accusations based on internet conspiracy theories. You cannot seriously be considering disrupting the biggest race of the Paralympic Games based on the rantings of someone who has no credentials or evidence." Karen's face reddened with indignation. "I am a concerned citizen with a responsibility to expose corruption wherever I find it. The fact that you're all trying to silence me just proves that there's something to hide. In 10 minutes, when the police arrive and find the evidence I know is there, you'll all wish you had listened to me." As if summoned by her words, the distinctive wail of police sirens echoed across the stadium complex. Marcus felt his heart rate spike as he realized this nightmare was actually going to happen. The other athletes in his heat began backing away, their coaches whispering urgent conversations about whether they should continue their own preparations or wait to see how this unprecedented situation would unfold. 3 police cruisers pulled up to the track entrance, their red and blue lights strobing across the stunned faces of spectators who had come to witness athletic excellence, not a criminal investigation. Sergeant Patricia Williams, a 20-year veteran of the Narcotics Division, emerged from the lead vehicle with the kind of purposeful stride that indicated she was taking these allegations seriously. Karen rushed to meet the officers, her voice carrying across the track as she repeated her accusations with even more dramatic flair than before. "Officers, thank you for responding so quickly. The suspect is over there in lane 4. His wheelchair contains hidden compartments designed to deliver performance-enhancing drugs during the race. This could be the biggest doping scandal in Paralympic history. Sergeant Williams approached Marcus with professional detachment, but her presence transformed the situation from an administrative dispute into a criminal investigation. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step away from your equipment while we conduct a search. We've received allegations that your wheelchair may contain illegal substances." The crowd in the stadium had begun to notice the commotion on the track, and a low murmur of confusion rippled through the stands. News photographers, initially positioned to capture the pre-race excitement, began snapping pictures of the surreal scene unfolding before them. Marcus realized that within minutes, images of him being investigated by police would be circulating around the world. "Officer, this is completely unfounded," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the chaos surrounding him. "My equipment has been thoroughly inspected by race officials. I've never used any illegal substances, and I'm happy to submit to any testing you require." But Sergeant Williams had already made her decision based on Karen's detailed accusations and the high-stakes nature of the event. "We're going to need to disassemble your wheelchair to conduct a thorough search. Our drug detection specialists are on their way with the proper equipment." Elena stepped forward, her voice rising with desperation. "This is absolutely unprecedented. You're talking about destroying a custom racing wheelchair worth $25,000, based on the word of someone who has presented no evidence whatsoever. This athlete is scheduled to compete in 15 minutes. The race director, Maria Santos, had been watching the situation unfold with growing horror. The Paralympic Games represented years of planning and millions of dollars in broadcast revenue. But she found herself caught between maintaining the integrity of the competition and preventing what was clearly becoming a media disaster. "Officers, surely there must be a way to conduct your investigation without completely disrupting the race schedule. Perhaps we could delay the start time while you perform a visual inspection." Karen sensed that officials were trying to minimize the scope of the investigation, and her voice rose to a near shout. "A visual inspection won't reveal hidden compartments designed to fool officials. These are sophisticated smuggling devices disguised as sporting equipment. The only way to expose this conspiracy is through complete disassembly and chemical analysis." Sergeant Williams nodded grimly. The weight of Karen's accusations, combined with the high-profile nature of the event, had convinced her that a thorough investigation was warranted. "We'll need to transport the wheelchair to our lab for proper analysis. The disassembly will be documented and filmed to ensure the integrity of our investigation." Marcus felt the world collapsing around him as two additional officers arrived with power tools and evidence bags. His racing wheelchair, the product of countless hours of training and the key to his athletic dreams, was about to be destroyed based on the paranoid fantasies of a woman he had never met. "Please," he said, his voice breaking, "this chair represents everything I've worked for. You're about to destroy my career based on conspiracy theories." The stadium crowd had now fully focused on the drama unfolding on the track. 12,000 spectators watched in stunned silence as police officers began the systematic dismantling of a Paralympic champion's equipment. The metallic screech of power tools cutting through carbon fiber created an almost surgical soundtrack to Marcus's public humiliation. Elena stood helplessly beside her athlete, tears streaming down her face as she watched years of preparation being literally torn apart. "This is wrong," she whispered. "This is so terribly wrong." Karen positioned herself where news cameras could capture her satisfied expression as police officers methodically disassembled the racing chair. "Truth has a way of coming to light," she announced to the growing crowd of media representatives. "Today, we're witnessing the exposure of a systematic cheating scheme that has compromised the integrity of Paralympic competition." The disassembly process took 47 minutes. Every bolt, every carbon fiber panel, every sophisticated component was carefully removed and examined under the harsh stadium lights. Police photographers documented each step, while drug detection equipment scanned every surface for traces of illegal substances. Marcus sat in a standard transport wheelchair, watching his dreams being systematically destroyed, while thousands of people captured his humiliation on their smartphones. The preliminary results were clear within an hour. No drugs, no hidden compartments, no evidence of any illegal modifications. The racing chair had been exactly what it appeared to be: a sophisticated but completely legal piece of sporting equipment designed to help a paralyzed athlete compete at the highest level. Sergeant Williams approached Marcus with an expression that mixed embarrassment with professional duty. "Sir, our preliminary examination has found no evidence to support the allegations made against you. We'll be conducting additional lab tests on some components. But at this point, you appear to have been falsely accused." The relief should have been overwhelming, but Marcus felt only numbness as he looked at the scattered remains of his racing chair. "The race was 2 hours ago," he said quietly. "My season is over. My wheelchair is destroyed. How exactly does an apology fix that?" Karen, faced with the obvious failure of her accusations, doubled down with the kind of conspiratorial thinking that had brought her to this point. This just proves how sophisticated their cheating methods have become. They're using substances that don't show up in standard tests, or they've managed to hide the evidence so well that even police can't find it. The absurdity of her response was too much for Elena, who finally lost her composure. "You just destroyed an innocent man's career based on internet conspiracy theories. And your response is to make up more lies. You are a disgusting human being." But the damage was already spreading beyond the stadium. Social media exploded with images and videos of Marcus being investigated by police, his wheelchair being dismantled, his dreams being publicly shattered. The hashtag Jocker Paralympic scandal began trending within hours, along with speculation about the extent of doping in Paralympic sports. Marcus returned to his hotel room that evening to find his phone buzzing with calls from reporters, sponsors, and fellow athletes. The preliminary police report clearing him of wrongdoing had received far less media attention than the dramatic images of his wheelchair being destroyed. His main sponsor, a major athletic wear company, had already released a statement expressing concern about recent developments and announcing a thorough review of their relationship with him. Elena found him sitting on his hotel bed, staring at his phone as message after message rolled in. "We're going to fight this," she said with fierce determination. "We're going to make sure everyone knows what really happened here today." "What's the point?" Marcus replied, his voice hollow with exhaustion. "The narrative is already written. Paralympic champion investigated for doping. That's what people will remember, not the fact that the accusations were completely false." But Elena had underestimated the power of truth in the age of social media. Dr. James Mitchell, a biomechanical engineer who had worked on Paralympic equipment for 15 years, watched the news coverage with growing outrage. He recognized Marcus's wheelchair as one of his own designs, a completely standard racing chair that contained no modifications beyond those approved by international racing authorities. Dr. Mitchell posted a detailed technical analysis on his professional blog, explaining exactly how Paralympic wheelchairs are constructed and why Karen's accusations were physically impossible. "I designed the chair that was destroyed today," he wrote. "Every component is documented and approved. The allegations made against Marcus Thompson are not just false. They demonstrate a fundamental misunderstanding of how racing wheelchairs actually work." The blog post was shared by engineering communities, disability rights advocates, and sports fans who recognized the injustice of what had occurred. Sarah Chen, a sports journalist with 2 million Twitter followers. Amplified Dr. Mitchell's analysis with her own investigation into Karen Pemberton's background. What Sarah discovered was a pattern of false accusations and conspiracy theories spanning several years. Karen had previously claimed that local swimming pools were using performance-enhancing chemicals, that high school track teams were using illegal timing devices, and that community tennis tournaments were rigged through electromagnetic manipulation of tennis balls. Each accusation had been thoroughly debunked, but Karen had never faced any consequences for her false claims. The story that emerged over the next 48 hours painted a clear picture. A decorated Paralympic athlete had been publicly humiliated, and his career potentially destroyed by a serial false accuser who had convinced police to take her conspiracy theories seriously. The international Paralympic community rallied around Marcus with an outpouring of support that surprised everyone involved. Thomas Rodriguez, a former Paralympic swimmer and current ESPN analyst, used his platform to deliver a scathing commentary about the incident. What happened to Marcus Thompson represents everything wrong with our rush to judgment culture. A man who has dedicated his life to clean competition, who has submitted to more drug tests than most professional athletes, had his career destroyed by someone with no credentials, no evidence, and no understanding of the sport she was attacking. The video of Rodriguez's commentary went viral, garnering 3 million views in the first day. Comments poured in from athletes, fans, and disability rights advocates expressing outrage at Marcus's treatment and demanding accountability for those responsible. Dr. Angela Foster, the chief medical officer for the International Paralympic Committee, released a statement detailing Marcus's testing history. Marcus Thompson has been subject to more than 40 drug tests over his career, including both scheduled and random testing. He has never failed a single test. His equipment has been inspected and approved by technical officials from multiple countries. The allegations made against him were not based on any credible evidence. As the true scope of the injustice became clear, sponsors who had initially distanced themselves from Marcus began reconsidering their positions. But the athlete himself remained skeptical about whether public opinion could undo the damage that had been done to his reputation and his ability to compete. The turning point came when Maria Santos, the race director who had been present during the investigation, published a detailed account of the events on the official Paralympic website. Her insider's perspective revealed the pressure that Karen had exerted on officials and the lack of any credible evidence supporting her accusations. I watched a dedicated athlete's dreams being destroyed in real time. Santos wrote, "The individual who made these false accusations showed no remorse as police dismantled equipment that represented years of training and financial sacrifice. This incident represents a failure of our systems to protect athletes from malicious attacks by individuals with no stake in fair competition." The article included security camera footage showing Karen's aggressive behavior toward officials and her obvious satisfaction as Marcus's wheelchair was being dismantled. The contrast between her triumphant demeanor and Marcus's devastation created a powerful visual narrative that further turned public opinion against her. Athletic equipment manufacturers began offering to build Marcus a new racing chair free of charge, recognizing both the injustice he had suffered and the positive publicity that would come from supporting him. Velocity Racing, a boutique manufacturer of high-end Paralympic equipment, reached out with an offer to create a custom chair using the latest technology available. But the most significant development came from an unexpected source: the law firm of Patterson, Williams and Associates, which specialized in defamation cases, contacted Marcus with an offer to represent him pro bono in legal action against Karen Pemberton. Lead attorney Jennifer Patterson had watched the coverage of the incident with professional interest and concluded that Marcus had a strong case for both defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Ms. Pemberton made specific, false accusations that damaged your reputation and career, Patterson explained during their first meeting. Her statements were not protected opinions. They were factual claims that have been proven false. The public nature of her accusations and the documented harm they caused create a clear path for legal remedy. Marcus hesitated, unsure whether pursuing legal action would further damage his reputation or help restore it. Elena, however, was adamant that accountability was necessary. She needs to face consequences for what she did. If we don't fight back, she'll just do this to someone else. The legal proceedings began just as the International Paralympic Committee announced the results of their own investigation into the incident. Their report was unequivocal. Marcus Thompson had been the victim of false accusations made by an individual with no expertise in Paralympic sports and no credible evidence to support her claims. More importantly, the IPC announced new policies designed to prevent similar incidents in the future. Race officials would no longer be required to halt competitions based on unsubstantiated accusations from spectators. A formal process would be established for handling allegations of cheating, requiring credible evidence and expert review before any investigative action could be taken. The policy changes represented a victory for all Paralympic athletes. But Marcus still faced the practical challenge of rebuilding his competitive career. The season was over, and he had missed his chance to defend his championship. Sponsors remained cautious, and the media attention, while increasingly supportive, continued to associate his name with doping allegations. That's when the Paralympic community decided to take direct action, led by current and former athletes. A grassroots movement emerged to support Marcus's return to competition. The Fair Play for Marcus campaign raised funds for his training expenses, equipment costs, and travel to upcoming competitions. More significantly, major sponsors began reaching out with offers that exceeded Marcus's previous contracts. Nike, Adidas, and several smaller companies recognized the marketing value of supporting an athlete who had become a symbol of integrity in the face of false accusations. The athlete who had lost everything due to one woman's lies was suddenly more valuable than ever. The climax of the entire saga occurred during the next major Paralympic qualifying event, held 6 months after the incident that had nearly destroyed Marcus's career. Karen Pemberton attempted to attend the competition, apparently believing that her previous accusations had been validated by the initial police investigation. However, the Paralympic Organizing Committee had implemented new security protocols specifically designed to prevent disruptions by individuals like Karen. When she appeared at the venue, security personnel immediately recognized her and refused entry based on a formal ban that had been issued following the investigation into her false accusations. Karen's attempt to force her way into the venue was captured on video by multiple news outlets. Her angry confrontation with security personnel, during which she repeated many of the same conspiracy theories that had been thoroughly debunked, provided a stark contrast to the dignified response that Marcus had shown throughout his ordeal. "I have a right to be here," Karen shouted at security officers. "I'm the one who exposed the corruption in this sport. Without me, you'd all still be living in denial about the systematic cheating that's destroying Paralympic competition." The security chief, a former police officer who had reviewed the entire case file, remained professionally calm. "Ma'am, you've been banned from all Paralympic events due to your false accusations against athletes. Your conspiracy theories have been thoroughly investigated and debunked. You need to leave the premises immediately." The contrast between Karen's delusional persistence and the measured response of officials perfectly encapsulated the broader narrative that had emerged around the incident. While Marcus had conducted himself with dignity throughout his ordeal, Karen had doubled down on increasingly absurd theories that painted her as either delusional or malicious. Inside the venue, Marcus was preparing for his return to competition with a custom racing chair that incorporated several innovations inspired by his experience. The new chair featured transparent panels that allowed officials to easily inspect its internal components, along with built-in sensors that could provide real-time data about its performance characteristics. Elena watched her athlete warm up with a mixture of pride and nervous anticipation. The past 6 months had been the most challenging of both their careers, but Marcus had emerged from the ordeal with a renewed appreciation for the sport and the community that had supported him. "How are you feeling?" she asked, as he completed his final practice lap. "Different," Marcus replied, his voice carrying a maturity that hadn't been there before the incident. "I used to race for medals and records. Now, I'm racing for everyone who's ever been falsely accused. Everyone who's had to fight for their reputation against people who don't care about truth." The race itself was one of the most watched Paralympic events in history, drawing viewers who wanted to witness Marcus's return to competition. When the starting pistol fired, 12 athletes launched themselves down the track. But the story was always going to be about the man in lane 4 who had fought his way back from public humiliation. Marcus won the race by the largest margin of his career, setting a new Paralympic record in the process. As he crossed the finish line, the crowd erupted in a sustained ovation that lasted nearly 5 minutes. Fellow competitors rolled over to congratulate him, and even race officials who had been present during his ordeal 6 months earlier applauded his remarkable comeback. In his post-race interview, Marcus was asked about Karen Pemberton and whether he felt vindicated by her ban from Paralympic events. "I don't think about her anymore," he said simply. "She took 6 months of my life. But she also taught me something important about the difference between people who build up and people who tear down. I choose to focus on the thousands of people who supported me through the darkest period of my career." The legal case against Karen concluded 3 months later with a substantial financial settlement that Marcus donated to programs supporting young athletes with disabilities. More importantly, the court's finding that Karen had knowingly made false accusations established a legal precedent that provided future protection for athletes against similar attacks. Karen herself largely disappeared from public view following the settlement, though she occasionally surfaced on obscure social media platforms to promote new conspiracy theories about various athletic competitions. Her credibility had been so thoroughly destroyed that even her most devoted followers began abandoning her causes. The incident's lasting impact extended far beyond the individuals directly involved. Paralympic organizations worldwide implemented new protocols for handling allegations of cheating, requiring credible evidence and expert review before any investigative action could be taken. The reforms protected athletes while maintaining the integrity of competition, creating a legacy that Marcus considered more important than any medal he had ever won. Elena, reflecting on the ordeal a year later, recognized how the experience had transformed both her and her athlete. "We learned that truth isn't always enough on its own. Sometimes you have to fight for it, defend it, and prove it over and over again. But when you do, when you refuse to let lies define you, that's when you discover what you're really made of." Marcus's story became a case study in sports law programs and journalism schools, illustrating both the dangers of false accusations and the power of community support in overcoming injustice. His sponsors, recognizing the marketing value of an athlete who had become a symbol of integrity, signed him to multi-year contracts worth more than he had earned in his entire previous career. But perhaps the most meaningful outcome was the youth wheelchair racing program that Marcus finally launched in Detroit, funded by his legal settlement and new sponsorship deals. The program provided equipment, coaching, and competition opportunities for young athletes with disabilities, ensuring that the next generation would have the support system that had ultimately saved his own career. On the program's opening day, Marcus spoke to the assembled young athletes about perseverance, integrity, and the importance of surrounding yourself with people who believe in truth over sensationalism. Sometimes life will test you in ways you never expected, he told them. People might question your character, your achievements, or your right to compete. But if you stay true to yourself and keep working toward your goals, you'll discover that the support of good people is stronger than the attacks of those who choose to spread lies. As he watched the young athletes begin their first training session, Marcus realized that Karen Pemberton's false accusations, intended to destroy his career, had ultimately led to something far more valuable than any individual athletic achievement. The program would outlast his racing career, providing opportunities and inspiration for generations of athletes who might otherwise never have discovered their potential. The stadium where his wheelchair had been dismantled now displayed a plaque commemorating the importance of due process and fair treatment in athletic competition. The inscription, suggested by Marcus himself, read simply, "Truth prevails when good people refuse to stay silent." Elena, now coaching several of the young athletes from Marcus's program, often told them the story of that day when everything seemed lost. "Your coach didn't just win races," she would explain. "He won something more important. He proved that integrity and community support can overcome even the most vicious attacks on truth and character." In the end, Marcus Thompson's greatest victory wasn't measured in seconds or records, but in the transformation of a personal injustice into lasting change that would protect and inspire future generations of Paralympic athletes. The woman who had tried to destroy him through lies had inadvertently created a legacy of truth, resilience, and community support that would endure long after the final race had been run.